Welcome back! Just so that you guys know, this will most likely be a two-part video. So one part, you're going to hear a little bit more about Danielle's. One part, you'll hear a little bit more about mine. So you'll see this one go up on Wednesday. Mine will go up on Friday.
So today, we are going to be talking about our delivery stories, and we both had C-sections. However, we both had very different experiences. First, we'll talk about mine. My C-section, I would say, was minorly planned. So when I was pregnant, I got very large because of Bennett. He was just a little bit of a bigger baby. He actually was not as large as they thought that he was going to be. Oh, mister. They thought that he was going to be like a 10-pound baby. He was not. He was 8 pounds, 14 ounces, and 22 inches long. But his head was massive. My little boy here was born with a 15.5-inch head.
To give you an idea, that's the size of Skylar's head right now. And she's 3 months old.
He just has a very large cranium. So I was also in labor for 2 weeks before we finally settled on a C-section. Basically what was happening was everything was happening except for I was not dilating. I was completely effaced. I was having strong and consistent tractions for 2 weeks. I was a peach. And then I went into my doctor's office and she's like, well, let's do an ultrasound. Let's see exactly what's going on, because my water hadn't broke yet. So there was no point to hurry into a delivery or anything yet. She said that basically what it looked like was my body was telling me that he's not going to fit. So we ended up doing the C-section that next Monday, which I was very upset about it. I had like 4 days to prepare for that and for my birth plan to change. So, you know, it was much different than what we had expected was going to happen. I did not want to have a C-section. I wanted to have a vaginal birth. I was ready to have a vaginal birth, and it just was not in the cards for me. And I did want to do what was best and safest for my baby. And I was going to end up in an emergency C-section anyways, if I even tried. It's actually a lot better to have a planned C-section than an emergency C-section. It's just so much more relaxed. Everybody is expecting it. Everybody's ready to do their job. The C-section itself went really well for me, and while I was signing all the paperwork and getting ready and stuff, I was all good until I was about to walk down to the operation room. Then I started to have a little bit of a harder time, but I knew one of the ladies that was actually in his delivery, and she came in and talked to me, and I felt a lot better about that. And my anesthesiologist was amazing, and I had a very, very good doctor, highest rated surgeon in our town. So when you have a C-section, you actually have 2 doctors in there. It's not something that I knew until the day that I was going to have my C-section. So I was very comfortable with it, and everything went very, very well. I also had a lot of amniotic fluid, which, if you don't know what that is, it's what the baby swims around in your uterus, and it's basically 90% of their pee. I will insert a picture right now of how large my stomach was when I was pregnant right at the end. It was ridiculous. But like right by your head, there's this like thing like where they're sucking all of the fluid into, and it filled that. Mine did. It filled that, and Blake said that when they popped my water, it literally gushed everywhere. Like it sloshed onto the floor everywhere. When my doctor broke my water, she literally went, all right, everybody stand back. And then I heard a pop, and then she went, whoa. For me, actually the scariest part of the whole C-section was, okay, well, number one, I've never had surgery, ever. I had my wisdom teeth taken out, and that was about it. The spinal that you have to get is, it's different from
An epidural.
From an epidural. It's a spinal tap. It's crazy. It works
so fast,
and literally like they got it in my back, and my anesthesiologist was very nice and literally explained to me vertebrae by vertebrae as he was going down my back why he was doing what he was doing, what it was going to do, why it was there, what it looked like. Because for me, I'm a little bit of a control freak, so, and I'm sure he does that with everybody, but for me, that was just very helpful. I'm gonna go back a little bit. Before they broke my water. My anesthesiologist was behind me, so he was like right here. Blake was to this side of me, sitting down, and he was explaining everything to me that was happening, but he was actually turned around looking at the equipment when they started the operation, and I was warned beforehand before I went in that my particular doctor started right away. Like, as soon as they knew that I was numb, she would just start at the equipment, and he turned back around and looked at me. He went, "Oh, they already started, but I'm sure you know that." I was like, "Yeah," or anything. It's not painful at all. It was not painful at all, but it feels like you're on a roller coaster ride, but you can't control your body. Like, you can feel them shoving and pushing around your body. And when they give you that spinal, it collapses all of your upper respiratory muscles, which I was not prepared for because that was one thing that I was not warned about. And it is so hard to breathe. She just kept telling me, like, try to take deep breaths, because Bennett was so big, it was kind of a little bit of a struggle to get him out. Like, the other doctor that I had in there, he was a bigger dude. Like, he's a muscular guy, and he was on this side of me, and I knew that because I could literally feel him bearing all of his weight down on, like, my upper chest by my ribs, and literally had his hands like this and was pushing him out. And my other doctor probably had her hands, you know, on his head and, like, in me and whatever, and that's kind of weird to think about, but, you know, that's how it works. And so she was probably, you know, like, pulling and had his shoulders or whatever. I don't know. We didn't videotape it. Can't tell you for sure. So, and, like, when they really started to push, I literally felt my whole body just, like, moving uncontrollably, because you're literally dead weight and you can't move anything. Like, so I might insert a picture here. I don't know if I will, but when you're in your C-section, you're literally like this. And you're not, like, strapped down, but they have, like, they're very loose, comfortable straps that are just laying over your wrists. So that way, if you have any kind of inclination or want to reach up and touch your stomach, you won't. But after the baby comes out, the actual process of getting the baby out is not the long part of the operation. He was probably out after they cut me within 15 minutes, max. Absolute max, probably more like 10. So, and, like, when they really started to push, I literally felt my whole body just, like, moving uncontrollably, because you're literally dead weight and you can't move anything. Like, so I might insert a picture here. I don't know if I will, but when you're in your C-section, you're literally like this. And you're not, like, strapped down, but they have, like, they're very loose, comfortable straps that are just laying over your wrists. But after the baby comes out, the actual process of getting the baby out is not the long part of the operation. He was probably out after they cut me within 15 minutes, max. Took a little bit over an hour just sewing me up. He came out. The first thing that one of the nurses said was, "Oh my God, look at all of his red hair," which on camera, he literally looks completely bald. I promise he's not. He has quite a bit of actually just very red hair that's hard to see. And when he came out, because his hair was wet, you could see it really well. So the lady said that, and Blake literally immediately stood up. And he said that he wasn't going to stand up. He didn't want to see it. And, like, they offered to the husbands to, like, stand up and watch the procedure or whatever, because you have this drape. And the reason why they have that drape is so if any complications happen or whatever, it doesn't freak the mom out because they can't see what's going on.
Some hospitals give you the option if you want to watch.
Ours didn't.
Ours didn't. Such a bummer.
And as soon as they said that, I just started bawling. And then he started crying. And one of the things about my delivery that was a little bit scary for me that I knew at the time was he did not have enough oxygen. The amount he was blue. But they got him on oxygen right away, and I think his oxygen level was only at like a 65% saturation. He immediately took to it. His levels balanced out, so it wasn't like a big deal or anything. He did fine. He leveled back out at like 90%, was perfect. Then Blake walked over and got to, cut the umbilical cord, and I know that I was not supposed to hear this part, because he said it very quietly. I was laying on the table and I was watching Blake with Bennett. I hear my anesthesiologist behind me whisper very quietly, "Oh, that's a lot of blood." And then he said louder. So and I was like, whatever, they're taking care of it, it's fine, not a big deal. If there's something wrong, I know that my doctor would tell me, I trust her. So he turned around and said, "I'm giving you morphine." Put morphine in my IV and shot it in. I didn't, which thank God. Like, if he was doing it, obviously I needed it for some reason. After that, everything for me got like a little woozy, I guess. Because it was an IV, it took almost immediately. So when I got to hold Bennett for the first time, I didn't really get to hold Bennett because I did not feel safe to do that. And like, I felt like he was so heavy and bearing down on me. And in all reality, when I look at the pictures, the only part of him that is on me is like from, I know you can't see my hand, but it's like, it was like from his mid back up, his head was resting on me. And I had my hand like this under him, because I was so dreary and I loved it, and I was talking to him, and he was, he had his eyes open, and of course he was crying. I mean, he just got ripped out of the womb. But
welcome into the world, little man.
And then I finally just said, "Blake, you have to take him. You have to take him. I can't support him. You have to take his head." And then like an hour and 45 minutes before I actually got to like physically hold and like be with him. And then he got to eat for the first time, and recovery was pretty good. It's really weird to have your whole body numb and then feel it very, very, very slowly come back. Took like a bag of ice and put it on you, and they were like, "Can you feel this? Is this cold?"
They didn't do that for me.
Oh, that's what they did for me. Like when she put the baggie on me, it took me about an hour to even start to feel it. And then I eventually, probably closer to the 2-hour mark, was able to like slightly move my legs. So then at that point they moved me out of recovery and into our room that we stayed in. When you have a C-section, they put these like cuffs, these pressure cuffs on your legs to keep the blood circulating, because you can't move and get up right away. And I know that in a vaginal birth you can't just like stand up and walk around and everything's perfect. Like, you have to take your time to get up and recover and everything like that. And with a C-section, it's like that too. It's just that you literally, like, you can't get up the same day that you have your operation. My recovery was a lot more difficult. It wasn't necessarily, like, it was not horrible, but my recovery was pretty hard. I don't know if it was just because Bennett was a bigger baby or what, because our incisions don't really look all that different. And I still have a lot of extra skin from when I had him, like, on my stomach. When I was pregnant, I was basically all baby. And if I'm being completely honest with you guys, I gained about 65 pounds during my pregnancy. And I was very fit and very in shape when I got pregnant with Bennett. I had abs, I looked great, I felt awesome about myself. And then I got pregnant and it was wonderful. And then I just like exponentially grew, and like I got my baby bump overnight, and it was a wonderful experience, but pregnancy was miserable. That's not what we're talking about here. So yeah, so it probably took me a good like 2 months to really like move around without any pain around my incision or anything like that. And I also did end up with a small tear in my incision that I had to go in and have looked at and taken care of. It wasn't huge, like my guts weren't spilling out or anything. It was just like a tiny little tear. Hardest thing for me in recovery wasn't even necessarily getting up and walking around. It was being in the car. Being in the car for me was agony because it jostled me so much. That's really all that I have to say about mine. If you guys have any questions, obviously I'm open to answering them. But we will move on to Cynica's C-section story here in a second. And you guys can catch that video on Friday.